Hey guys! So since we're in the middle of our measurement unit, we just finished with perimeter and area, so now we're going to start with capacity and weight and all the other different things that go in measurement. And so I thought a good way to start off this unit in this topic of capacity is to show you guys some of the things that you'll do in real life with these math skills that we'll be practicing. So I'm going to be making banana muffins since I have a bunch of bananas that have gone bad and I need to use them. So I'm going to take you guys along with me while I measure some things out so y'all guys can see what it looks like as I am baking. So in my recipe, I'm going to need a couple of different things. So I've got 2 bowls because it needs it to be in 2 different places for the wet and dry ingredients. So one of the first things I'm going to need is flour. And so my recipe calls for 1.5 cups of flour. So I've got my scoop here that says 1 cup. So I'm going to need one of these that will fit in my jar. You want to make sure that when you're measuring too, you get it right to the top so it's just full. You don't want to make sure that there's any extra on top or that it's not filled up all the way, because then it won't really be exactly 1 cup. So a good way you can do that is kind of scrape your finger like that, and then you've got 1 full cup of flour. So I'm going to put that 1 cup, but my recipe said 1.5, so now I'm going to take my 1/2 cup and I'm going to fill that with flour as well. Same thing, you want to make sure you get all the way across the top so you've got that full 1/2 cup, and I'm going to add it. So that's my 1.5 cups of flour. The next thing that I'm going to need is baking powder, baking soda, and salt. So for my baking powder and my baking soda, I don't need as much as I do flour. I only need a little bit, so I'm going to use a teaspoon. So same thing, I'm going to scoop it and make sure that it just gets to the top. Dump it in. Same thing with the baking powder. Scoop, and I'm going to put it in. Okay? Now for salt, I don't need that much either, and I'm going to use an even smaller unit of measurement, which is a 1/2 teaspoon. So I'm going to be kind of careful with this because I'm pouring it out of here. Oftentimes you might scoop it, but I don't have anything to scoop it, so I'm just going to kind of be careful and then dump that in. Now I can move on to the wet ingredients, which is a little bit different. So I've got my 3 bananas that I'm going to mash in just a little bit, but I need 3/4 of a cup of sugar. Now, I don't have a measuring cup that is 3/4 on its own. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my 1/4 cup and I'm gonna use 3 of them, because remember when we were doing fractions, we know that 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 is the same thing as 3/4. So you don't always have to have the exact amount. You can always make it work, okay? So I'm gonna take 1, 2, and 3/4 of my sugar. The next thing that I need is 1 egg and then 1/3 of a cup of melted butter. Now a lot of times butter is going to come in a stick, so you're not going to have like your exact measurement, but if you look close on here, it'll give you all of the measurements that you might need when you're cooking with butter. Okay, so it's got all of the tablespoons, and then down here this very last red line says 1/3 cup. So if I go here and I cut right there along, that should give me exactly the 1/3 of a cup of butter that I'm gonna need. So my recipe calls for me to melt it. So I'm gonna take the wrapping off in just a little bit, but I'm gonna melt it in that cup. And then I need a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla. Now this is liquid as opposed to the powder that I've been using, but it's still the same. Take my 1/2 teaspoon, measure it out, make sure I get just to the top, and dump it in. Now that I've got everything all measured out, I'm gonna mix it all up, put it in my baking pan right here, and then I'll come back and I'll show you guys the finished result.